educating, encouraging, and engaging students in all aspects of a diverse and inclusive community to support them in adopting a lifestyle and lifestyle habits that truly reflect a society determined to create a more sustainable environment for this generation and generations to come. Campus with a Conscience is just one of the reasons why I am personally delighted and honored that the Jeffrey Sachs Center on Sustainable Development is based here at Sunway University, Malaysia.
Good evening again, everyone. My name is Jane. I'm from Faculty of Medical and Life Sciences. So today I will be moderating today's discussions. So welcome to today's sessions, Beyond Buzzwords, Expectations versus Reality in Driving Sustainability. Sustainability is a word we hear almost every day today in the university, businesses, government, and even in the product we buy. So most of us would agree that we want a more sustainable future, right? Okay. So, but the real question is, what happens when sustainability become difficult, okay, expensive or inconvenient? In reality, sustainability is not so straightforward. So we have to balance environmental protection, economic development, affordability, and cater to the needs of the community. As today's sessions highlights, translating sustainability ambitions into actions involve real trade-off and difficult decisions. We are very fortunate to have two speakers with us today who bring their perspective to today's discussions. Mr. Ravin, Head of Global Stakeholder Engagement at Wilmar International, and Mr. Murali, Regional Director for East, Southeast Asia and Oceania at C40 cities. So please join me in welcoming Mr. Ravin and Mr. Murali to the front. Okay. We test the mic, okay? So you want to? Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Jane. Dr. Jane. I think I'm going to skip the microphone because my voice is
okay?
loud enough, I believe. And make things a little more informal and comfortable.
Need a mic. Yeah, because this one is also Facebook Live.
I see. So I'm forced to use the microphone. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, students and friends.
And YouTube Live.
And cyberspace. So as introduced, my name is Ravin. I am the head of stakeholder engagement for Wilmar International. We are the world's largest processor for palm oil, sugar, and few other commodities. And we're also the number one consumer goods brand in China, among others. So that's our global footprint that we have there. We have presence all over the world, and we are involved. We've got our little fingers in many different commodities and agribusinesses. Murali, would you like to introduce yourself? Okay, so I've been asked to do a quick presentation, so I'm going to keep it as interactive and brief as possible. So as mentioned, our discussion is on what is the expectations versus the reality in driving sustainability. Because as Dr. Jane mentioned, we need sustainability in order to make sure that, the future is still there for us. But people don't really realize what are the challenges that are out there, against the aspirations and the perception that they have. So let's sort of uncover that. So first thing, I like to ask the crowd here, raise your hands. How many of you support sustainability?
Wow.
So everyone, right? So now my next question, and there's no judgment here, but be honest with yourselves. How many of you are willing to pay, say, 30% more for sustainably produced food and products? Right? 30%.
20,
But of course,
20%.
but that's already economics, right? If it goes in tandem with your salary and inflation and all. But generally, with what you're earning today, if you buy a can of Coke for 1 ringgit 50 cent or 2 ringgit, will you be willing to pay 30% more if the manufacturer says this can of Coke was produced sustainably? Right? And then that's just the first level, right? And you see, that's why I've named it Mind the Gap, because that is the gap that's there. And then the next question, you go even a little higher, where you ask, how many of you are going to refuse? Just going to say outright no to products where you don't know whether it's produced responsibly or sourced responsibly or produced sustainably? Are you just going to say, I don't know where's this from? I don't know, I cannot determine what's in it, and whether whatever products, ingredients that have gone in it was done responsibly and sustainably. So I'm just going to outright say no, you can't do that. You don't even need to go to products on the shelf, right? You go to the wet market, you buy your vegetables, you don't know whether the workers who are growing and harvesting those vegetables are paid the proper wages, are they being taken care? So are you just going to say no? Of course not, right? You would think these are low value items because they're your vegetables. What about your seafood, your poultry? When you buy your fish, are the fishermen earning well enough? When you buy your chicken, are the farmer workers on the farm being paid well? And all of that. So there's a lot of questions they need to, but nobody's going to outright say no, right? And then the more important question, macro scale, how many of you are willing to sacrifice economic growth, whether it's your own personal one because you want higher salary, or you're looking at your national GDP? Are you going to say, yes, I'm willing to have a smaller economic growth for the country or your state or yourself in the name of sustainability? So these are questions that we need to ask ourselves, which comes to my next thing, where we talk about the trade-offs, right? So everyone has this impression that sustainability means we're protecting the environment, we're protecting people, reducing emissions, but at the same time trying to achieve economic prosperity. But the fact is, everything comes with a cost. For food production, you need more land, you need ecosystem, because as populations increase, we need more areas to grow more food and to produce more food. And then there's also the question of cost versus income. And then for everything that we do, whether it's the legal compliance or sustainability requirements by the market, all of them also comes with a cost. And then we talk about adapting to new technology, solar, renewable energy. All these are heavy capitals that need to be put in first before we can make the shift. So all of these need to come into question. So at the end, my pitch is sustainability is about achieving the balance. We need to understand where the trade-offs are, and we need to work it out where everybody gets to win. Not one person wins more than the other. Because at the end of the day, when you talk about sustainability, the cost to do conservation, that needs a lot of money. for protecting forests, getting people on the ground, even protecting biodiversity. You see campaigns about protecting tigers, elephants, rhinos. These are all separate agendas, but they all need a lot of investments. And then you look at welfare workers, community and development, certification and audits. All of this is part of sustainability. You can't just say, I'm going to make a commitment and not put all of this into there. And last but not least, the two is training, because people need to know, how do I be sustainable? I can't go to my supplier and say, I need you to be sustainable. And then he looks at me, boss, how? I don't know. Right? So this needs to come into training. And then remediation, because there are situations where people don't know better, or maybe they knew and they closed an eye. They're not paying their workers the right salaries. They're not paying their suppliers the right amount that they need to. So all of this, then we need them to make the change, and then they need to put money for that. So at the end, what's the real challenge of implementation? As I mentioned, agriculture needs more land, compliance to regulation and requirements. There's complex supply chains. I take palm oil, where we are in the business we're in, for example. We have thousands of suppliers and millions of farmers worldwide, right? It's not so simple. And this goes to our buyers, who in turn have thousands of products. Nestle, Unilever, Mondelez, Procter & Gamble. Almost everything you touch has got some portion of our product in it. So it's not as simple as say, I'm going to switch. You can't do that. So at the end of the day, to say that having zero issues on the ground is unrealistic. And now that I mentioned farmers, this is a very important thing. Why farmers are important, why smallholders are important. Because very often they are left out from the conversations and discussions. We have all these high-level conversations about NDC, about carbon footprint, PCF, and all these different terms and commitments and pledges. But more often than not, the farmer is not seated in the room. He can't tell you what his problems are. If you're familiar with regulation in Europe, they came out with the European Union deforestation regulation, EUDR. You need to comply to EUDR once it's ratified, so that you can continue exporting to Europe. But if you go to a smallholder farmer and you tell him you need to be EUDR compliant, say, what is EUDR? How do I comply? Right? So they don't understand. So all of this comes with a cost. We need to guide them, and in order to do that, sustainability needs to be practical, inclusive, and also economically viable. We've had these conversations with farmers, because at the end of the day, the farmer is more concerned about bread and butter. How do I put food on the table? How do I pay the rent? How do I put my kids to school? How do I pay my medical fees? Right? So it's not to say that they don't care about sustainability, but they have more pressing matters to worry about, as compared to, am I doing things responsible manner, or is it sustainable? That comes secondary. They need to fill their bellies first. And why another reason sustainability becomes challenging is because each stakeholder group have got a different set of priorities. Like I mentioned, farmers are concerned about incomes and livelihoods. You look at governments, they're looking at economic growth, employment. Companies need to make a profit and growth. Communities need to look at development. Investors look at risk management. And for our civil societies, they look at environmental and social protection. So at the end, sustainability leadership is making sure that we understand each of these stakeholder groups' competing priorities, and we need to work together to find that common ground so that we can move forward together. Now, I know some people talk about regulation. I mentioned EUDR earlier, right? So, said, why can't we just make more laws? Why can't we, just enact more legislation? Because although regulations and laws, they establish minimum standards, they provide accountability, and they provide due diligence, But in order to effectively implement laws and regulations, there must be knowledge and capacity. Again, you go down to the smallholder farmer in rural Malaysia. I'm not even talking about parts of Africa and Indonesia where I've visited, but just rural Malaysia, they don't have that exposure, they don't have that understanding, they don't have the capacity to understand all these different laws and regulations that certainly they have to abide by, right? And then there's also the question of financing and resources, because all these compliances need work and preparation, and that has a cost to it. As I mentioned earlier, technology and infrastructure also is a big factor because it needs capital, and who's going to provide that capital? And last but not least, the most important element there is collaboration. We need to have all the stakeholders working together. I think we've lost our slides. I'm talking to myself. Keep talking. Okay, so I just jump straight to the end, right? So what are the key takeaways from driving sustainability in matching that expectation and reality? Number one, we need to manage the trade-offs. You know, we need to lead responsibly and need to make sure that we emphasize on progress over perfection. These last point, from my own experience, we've also always engaged with stakeholders and they say, why can't you come up with the perfect solution? And I said, if we would, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Because if you were to wait for the perfect solution, no one's going to move forward. So it's okay if you're crawling or you're walking or you already be able to run, but at least you're starting that journey to that destination. Thank you.
Yeah. So my name is Murali, and I work with C40 Cities. So C40 Cities is a coalition of about 100 cities around the world, but they didn't change the name, so they kept it at C40. It was then 40 cities. Anyway, we work with cities to advance, well, broadly sustainability. But what I mean by that is reducing emissions at a city scale, also adaptation to climate change. Ravin mentioned NDCs. So the NDCs are discussions that happen at the national level, but they don't necessarily bring in the cities to that discussion. And this is where we come in and say, hey, look, you know, the cities need a voice because most of the solutions are in the cities, and most of the action and policy and financing that is needed at the city level. So we represent the cities to bring those conversations to the multinationals at COP, etc., and getting financing to help cities to progress their interventions to meet their climate action plan, etc. So that's what I do. I don't have slides today. I just came to answer any burning questions you may have.
Okay, thank you for the insightful presentations. So, any questions from the floor? Yeah, can I? Zai?
As I can see, most of the people say sustainability, but this branding take advantage of certain people only. So this is my first question. And second thing is, you in beginning you mentioned that if you willing to pay 30% more, then most of us we said no. What I feel, because we don't in person, I don't really trust the brand. So brands say I spent for this, for that, for this. Is it true? How you verify? Because as my previous experience, I work for H&M. So I am the sustainability deputy manager for that brand. So even though they charge high from customer, okay, this product we are using this and that sustainable product, you pay high, but end of the day, this money going to where? This is my question also. Thank you.
Very good question, Zaid. Thank you very much. So first, if you talk about how sustainability applies to different layers of society, rightfully, it should be a one-size-fits-all, right? You talk about addressing climate, protecting forests, biodiversity. All of this should be benefits that every different social class can enjoy. That's, of course, again, expectation, right? In reality, that's not the case, unfortunately. But this is where, like what I said, stakeholders need to come together and we need to work together, because given example, the current situation with the intense heat felt worldwide, the ones that are suffering the most are the ones that cannot take shelter in air-conditioned spaces. In South Asia, in Thailand, whether you're a tuk-tuk driver, an auto driver, rider, you're working out in construction, labor, you are exposed to that heat. And it's very unfortunate. Yeah? And that is the case, right? And meanwhile, you know, people like us, we're complaining about the heat and we run into an air-conditioned room like this. Right? But you know, this is where everybody needs to play their part in ensuring that. But this also comes back to, we're not only talking about sustainability in terms of the environment, we're also talking about labor, we're also talking about community, we're also talking about wages. How do I pay my people? Are we paying them enough? We still have a situation where, of course, now with Grab and Uber, you can't haggle. But, you know, in places where you get into a taxi and running a meter, hey, boss, can reduce the price. Right? The guy earns only so much, and we still want to ask for a discount. Right? That's how it is. You know, anywhere we go, you know, I often have this issue with friends of mine where we go to somewhere like, hey, got discount. It's like, guys, how much does the guy earn, man? Right? His margin is that much. I think we should allow him to have that. So as long as people are not earning what they need to be earning, then we have a problem. It's the same thing if you look at supply chains. How much are we buying your raw material in the market, the supermarket, and then the trader or wholesaler that's providing it to them. And then at the end of the day, you think you're paying very high for a fish, but the fisherman's not seeing that profit. So how do we break that? So this is where we need to look at a solution that let's solve this so that the fisherman rightfully earns the lion's share of what we're paying for this. And then when you talk about, quick one on what brands are saying, right? Greenwashing is there. We're not saying it's not. But this is where your own due diligence as a consumer is important to go and check up on it, right? You know, that there are so many certification work that's out there. There's so many sustainable brandings, logos, bodies that we could go and do our own due diligence and understand what's this logo about, right? There are some people who make their own sustainable logos on their products. It's out there. It happens. But go and find out, what's this logo about? And you'll be surprised, right? It might be good, it might not. Then you'll know how to choose what products to support. But there are different commodities that are driving this understanding and awareness to teach you.
Sorry, any brand actually, because we are, you know, I am from Bangladesh. We are the big producer, textile, producer. So usually the brand always asks the sustainable product, sustainable tag, logo, this and that. But if you ask, okay, can you please increase 2 cents for each product? Cannot. So how they promote sustainability? That's the question.
So this comes back, right, to what are the brands we want to support? Right? Are you going to support a brand that is not paying the people, its suppliers well? Remember I mentioned paying the suppliers earlier, right? This is one example. We experienced that as well. Even in the early days, we want your oil, your palm oil to be meeting all these different standards and regulations and compliance and my own expectations. We say, okay, all of this comes with a cost. it comes down to $1 extra per ton. No, I'm not going to pay. They'll outright tell you that's the reality of it. Because especially if you're looking in price-sensitive markets like China, South Asia, Bangladesh, Pakistan, India, it's very commercial, price-sensitive markets where even $1 would make a difference to the consumer, right? We're not even talking about 30% more. That's premium. That's you're talking about the organics and the sustainable branding. But you're talking about, am I going to pay 1 ringgit more for this mineral water compared to that? And they will say, it's just water, I'll buy the cheaper one. So that's how. But it needs to have a collective movement by everyone towards that goal.
Thank you. Evening. Excuse me. My name is Chris Boyd. I'm a shareholder of Wilmar. Yeah. Still waiting for it to hit $5. No, but that aside, seems to me there's a lot of wishful thinking associated with sustainability, which in itself is quite a nebulous concept, isn't it? And when you tell us that EU are mandating the amount of, they're trying to tie sustainability to replanting of forests, for example. And there are many other examples. So these are people sitting in an ivory tower in Europe somewhere, and they've probably never been to a palm oil plantation. So how much do they really know, and how realistic are some of these objectives? I mean, your own example of tuk-tuk driver, right? For all you know, he's a multimillionaire. I mean, I agree with you. You shouldn't sort of, grind down to the last cent. It's not right. But you don't know. It's a judgment call, isn't it? Your own part. And nobody's telling you that this is the law, or this is compulsory, or you won't go to heaven if you don't give him a decent fare. So it seems that the world is really, is this becoming a religion rather than an objective? Sustainability, I mean. What are your comments on that?
So Chris, as you very rightly put it, most of the stakeholders we've engaged in the past, I think now they've become a bit more informed and learned about the topic. But we call them our friends who sip their fancy matcha lattes in London, have not been to the field. A lot of desktop analysis and assessments. They've not seen a tree. They've not spoken to the workers, and they judge us by what are their expectations and norms. So we've gotten used to that, but we've also taken the opportunity to engage and educate, and explain to them what the realities on the ground are. How does this impact farmers? How does this impact workers? How does this impact communities? So there are majority of them who have taken it onto themselves to learn and improve. But it's still a problem, because then they set us against standards. So I give you an example. Most recent news, where the Trump administration is looking to repeal a particular legislation in US that puts all forest in the United States at risk. We're talking about something like 500 million hectares in the United States, right? Where now, if this goes through Senate, what happens is they're able to build roads through this forest. They're able to mine in his forest, because his famous words is still drill, baby, drill. They're able to log in this forest. And at the same time, while this is happening in that side of the world, we have American-based NGOs coming to tell us, this is how your standards for forest protection are. Need to be. So that's the reality of it. We just need to manage. Another another very recent story, too good to be true. We have a group of young, passionate environmentalists from all over Europe and UK coming and telling us, oh, we get often all these different social media comments and oh, you need to do this, you need to protect the orangutans, you need to protect the tigers, you need to protect forests. And at the same time, I recently read this news, and when my colleague shared it with me, I thought it was fiction, right? Where a telco company had to spend half a billion pounds to relocate undersea cables because it ran over a fictional grave. If you're a Harry Potter fan, you know the character Dobby, right? It ran over a fictional grave of a Harry Potter character. I'm not making this up, and I'll show you the article in the Guardian. So they spent, yeah. So this was reported, and this particular company spent 400 over million pounds just to do that relocation work because a group of Harry Potter fans said you need to do this. So where's the sustainability in that? That money could be well spent elsewhere easily.
If I could just respond to that. Very quotable quote from John Mahathir, who was confronted by a team of British scientists who were criticizing the palm oil industry in general, And he said, well, you're from Britain, right? So where are all your oak trees and all your bears? So it can't be one law for one and one law for another, can it?
Yeah, maybe ask me that question.
Okay, I think I will ask you some questions.
I'm happy to keep quiet.
No. Okay, any questions? Okay, I want to ask more. Any questions? Okay.
Because I read your questions, I don't want to answer. Answer whether there's any other question. You want some surprise,
Oh, okay. Any questions from Murali? No. Now I ask my questions. Okay. Right. So many people hear sustainability city, and immediately we will think of solar panel, okay, EV car, or green building. So from your experience, what make a city sustainable for ordinary people like us?
So first, some general framing where the climate sits. We, based on the latest IPCC report, we are already looking to exceed we already exceed the 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial times, and I think we're looking at a 1.8 trajectory in the next few years. And every 0.1 degrees has got massive effect on floods and heat and our ability to cope with the heat and other things. So that's one. Now, from a city perspective, as a system, so let's say Kuala Lumpur, and you've got 7 million people, right, living here. The emission profile, and it's more or less the same across the many cities, you'd see that about 50% of the emissions are coming from buildings. So operating buildings, that's your air conditioning primarily, and then your lighting and your services, etc. Another 40% is coming from transportation, and that's us driving and freight, supply, delivery, etc. And 10% comes from waste, right? So this is the sort of the mix. So from a climate perspective, when we think about mitigation, then we need to look at how do we reduce emissions. The biggest impact is actually from the buildings and transportation. So on a building side, it's about trying to be as energy efficient as possible. So cities, we advise to mandate certain minimum standards so that on a per say square foot basis, it reduces the uptake of energy, thinking in terms of passive cooling, mechanical cooling, ventilation, etc. So there are various strategies in place for that. And then secondly, in terms of transportation, it's about how to push people into public transportation instead of driving. And that is also a function of how cities are designed, so that you don't have to travel long distances to get what you need. And so this whole concept about 15-minute cities that are now it's been there for a while, but it's getting popular, so that you just don't have to travel more than 15 minutes for all your needs, and you can live within your, so to say, cocoon, and you can just function like a normal human being within that sort of area. So that is two things so the planning part of it becomes really important. So these are the two sort of main things. Now, when you mention solar panels, obviously you talk also about how do you decarbonize the grid, and often that falls on the hands of the sort of national government for many cities. But now a lot of cities are taking ownership and saying, okay, look, I want to augment that and take my own action. So we're doing some work with Ho Chi Minh City and Bangkok, where we are mapping out their irradiance level across rooftops across the entire city, so that the city knows what is the rooftop solar potential across the city, and then based on that, what are the policies that can be implemented to unlock that potential so that private investors can come in. I mean, it can be owners of the houses themselves or external private investors and the financing, and how do you work that out so that you fully realize this potential. And that's the city taking action to sort of reduce the dependence on fossil fuel-based electricity. So that's one. And then the other thing is also transport. Other than public transport, you also need to think about electrification in what kind of infrastructure needs to be in place, and that's something the cities can also control. Yeah.
I think, can I have the mic?
Sorry. I'm Tomoko from Japan. Because I'm Japanese, although I live in Malaysia longer than most of you.
Really?
Okay. So, two things, right? Aircon. I think all your buildings are too cold for Japanese, right? And public transportation, I don't know why you have to locate the station in such a way, right? So, yeah. So, as a Japanese, I noticed that technology, everything going fast, and Malaysia being a young country, I seldom hear the part of education, especially the lower education, elementary school. Almost everything I know about sustainability, I think I learned in elementary school in Japan. So here, like budget, how do you allocate your budget for education to educate? I think it is a long game, isn't it? We can talk about latest technology and technology changing every day and whatnot, but when it comes to the whole thing, sustainability, I think it's a long game. And I think no choice. You have to start from elementary school, ideally kindergarten. So how the city, I'm from Fukuoka City, okay? So yes, Ipo's sister city. So I came to Malaysia because of the sister city youth exchange program. So for the long game, how do you place the role of lower education when you talk about sustainability?
Actually, you hit the nail on its head. That is the primary issue. You had one question before I come to yours. You had one question in saying that policy versus, what's that question? Can you read out? Policy versus Okay, never mind. The question that was there was something like, what would you prioritize? Policy, as in policy push, or individual action? That was
you want more policy, like we always say, oh, the government should do this and the government should do that. You want more rules or you want more policy, not my individual actions, something like that.
So who should drive sustainability initiatives? Is it us changing our behavioral pattern, or is it policy?
Or you want a penalty, or you want
so obviously there needs to be both, right? But the policy aspect, it's really hard to introduce policies that would impact my lifestyle unless I understand why that policy is being introduced. And for that, there needs to be good quality education on the subject matter and awareness raising. And this is where, Japan really stands out in terms of how do you educate. The simplest thing is just take littering, right? There's no such thing as littering in Japan, right? And at the same time, there's no bins either. You take your trash home, right? You have to take it home, right? Whereas here, it's like, oh, you gotta put the bin unless, and even with the bin, people will, so and all that. And then this is causing clogged drains, and it's causing floods, especially flash floods. And then it ends up in the oceans, and then it ends up in the fish, and it ends up back in us, in microplastics, in the form of microplastics. But how many people know that? So you have to start the education at the lower primary level, and then really drill that into the kids on like the basic things you need to understand about our home, which is the earth. Yeah. So that when policies are introduced, and policies are introduced, people know. They say, you know what, this is a bit painful, but it's needed. Yeah, it's okay, And the other thing that is really important, especially in democracies like Malaysia, where it can be a little bit, what do you call that? Well, nowadays it's seasonal, right? We keep changing. But the power of youth especially to demand changes of politicians. So you want to be voting for politicians who are talking about climate, not only talking about race and religion, but we need people who are talking about the economy as well as the climate and what we need to do, and we need to raise the bar and pay and all that sort of stuff. All this is really important, but you need issues-based representation, and the more educated people are, the more they can advocate for that sort of thing. Yeah.
Not question, I think most Japanese never question why do we have to pick up the rubbish, right? Because we've been trained since elementary school. So it's how you spend the money or how you place the budget. I think that's sometimes I always wondered that Malaysian pay any attention to lower education, because higher education is fantastic, probably better than Japan, but lower, and I don't hear much attention there in Malaysia. So I hope you will do it in the city.
I also want to add to Moko-san that it's also, in addition to education, we also need to emphasize on cultural mindset, and this is where the Japanese win. Right? We could have a bin that's 10 steps away, but I'll see the guy throwing the rubbish where he stands. For the very same reason, you could have a parking space that's 300 meters where you could park and not inconvenience anyone and have a good, healthy walk to your location. But if you could give the person an opportunity, they would love to park right at the doorstep of the restaurant they want to go to, right? Because they want to minimize the amount of time and distance that they walk. This is the cultural mindset that we have today, and this needs to change. That's right. So, we need to start them young, and we need to show them practice by what we preach. Lead by example.
Not a budget thing. I think the budget is there. It's just a question of priorities. So it's not like, we've actually got a decent lower education. It's just that the curriculum doesn't necessarily involve civic education across the board, as well as climate science. It's not there as well. Yeah.
Has introduced this in the past, I think maybe 6 to 8 years since COP21 was signed, right? Yeah, and then I think that the question that it just keeps prompting in my mind is that whatever that has been discussed or has been brought up and talked about, as where we talk about like who's supposed to drive this initiative, right? Does it come from the government, from the legislation side, or does it come down to the individual? I think who then takes up that ownership? Because when we start looking at stakeholders by stakeholders and start talking to each and every different stakeholders, nobody will come to a consensus. When there's no one driving that, it will always be revolving, and that becomes like a Scandinavian issue, Nobody wants to make a decision until everyone sits down and says yes. Even if one says no, it will never go through. And I don't know. I mean, it's a lot of things, like then we have to look at how and who can actually deconstruct the entire economic system, government, your supply chain. All this trickles down all the way to the very root, which is the base of the pyramid, the producers, right? And I think back to then relating to what you mentioned about the small smallholders, the farmers. I did my interviews, in my research when I was trying to figure out like why are Malaysian farmers, why are we not driving more sustainable initiatives? I mean, there have been like other NGOs like Wow Asia, reaching out to the smallholders in the palm oil sector, trying to help them to get the certifications and all this. But when it comes to, for example, poultry, the layer farms, the ruminant sector as well, there is very minimal support from the government financially to implement initiatives like this. Then the question will come down to, for another fun fact that like it was also something about monopolies. The corporates are monopolizing the entire sector, the supply chain, and the smallholders they have no choice but to be subject to the demands and control of the big corporates. They will tell you, okay, milk per liter, I'm going to just pay you for 2 ringgit. 1 week later, after they commit and say, okay, I'm going to buy X number of tons from you at this price, 1 week later, they can just snap their fingers and say, oh, you know what? I'll just buy it at 1 ringgit 80 cents. You don't have a say. Do you want to sell your milk to me or not? And there's a short, there's a lifespan for products like this. So how do we actually look at from a legislation's part, from a governance part, to control the corporates as well? Because at the end of the day, the corporates can say, I'm going to increase 60 cents, 30%, 40%, because I need to become more sustainable, more green. But then it drives up the corporate's profitability at the expense of who? So sorry, I know I ran a bit quite long, but yeah.
So I think there are few responses that I need to provide. So number one is, who's going to drive it? Short answer is everyone. Everyone needs to play their part. And everyone needs to pressure the other group. As a consumer, you need to pressure the corporates, and you also need to pressure your government. On one part, you need to show them that the markets are driving this. I mean, coming back to the palm oil story, why did this trigger sustainability in palm oil? It's because the consumers, they pushed the markets, and the markets recognize we have to change because people are going to stop buying the brands. They're going to stop buying the chocolates. They're going to stop buying the shampoos. They're going to stop buying everything that had palm oil in it. And everyone else knew that there were alternatives. So on one hand, you pressure the market. On the other hand, you pressure your government. What needs to be done to complement that action in terms of regulation, in terms of legislation? So that's the consumer's power. The government also needs to do this. I come up with the policy or law that's going to cover the corporates, but also cover consumers. Example, no plastics, right? Go to market, bring your own shopping bag. It's an inconvenience at start, but everybody gets used to it. You know, it's an unpopular thing, but it is what it is. So there are many ways that everybody gets to play their part and pressure each other and keep each other, provide a checks and balance. So as long as everybody plays their part and not play the Tai Chi game, you do first, and then I will follow. And then you do the same, and then in the end of the day, no one's doing it, and we're all playing musical chairs with the accountability on who needs to take action. Everybody needs to have a bit of their part to play in order to make this happen. So that is how we need to look at it, right? So again, even when you come up with different regulations, it's important to get all the stakeholders in the room, not selected, but all, because only when you understand what challenges each of these different groups are facing, can we work together to see, okay, how can we solve this together? Right? Not everyone just taking care of what's important to me. I also need to recognize what's important to you. And for sustainability in the agribusiness sector, palm oil especially, we are speaking from our experience, palm oil and sugar, we quickly learn, the industry has learned that it's also a good measure for due diligence, risk management, and best practices. With the implementation of the sustainability initiatives on the ground, we've got lower cost, we've got better yield. Why? Because we use less chemicals, we manage our resources better in terms of water, we take care of the soil, we do a lot of these things more efficiently, and we also achieve sustainability. So that's the goal, right? So we also realize why I talk about due diligence and risk management, because along the way we've learned that every time someone tries to do something incorrectly, there will be a disruption in operations, whether it's the workers not happy, the surrounding community is not happy, your suppliers not happy. In the end, it will affect your productivity. So by doing all of this, we realize we minimize that risk, and that helps us grow the business.
If I can add, so this is what climate anxiety looks like. This guy, look at him. It's just like, but his anxiety is beyond climate. It's also about smallholders and So, but then you also have a responsibility, right? I just say that you raise really important points, and I think we just need to do what we can in our small way to get the word out, right? So if it comes across in your research, then think of ways you can sort of call these companies out, publish your findings. And there are a lot of guys out there who are influencers who are making investigative journalism on these subjects, and you sort of raise it to them, because you need to sort of call these companies out for their sort of poor behavior, and so that they will keep themselves in check for sort of unethical practices, right? But in a small way, also allow me to share about my favorite fruit, which is durian. So I love durian. I'm originally from Penang, as is Ravin, and I grew up around durian. But increasingly now, when it's durian season, when I go out, I find myself not eating much durian because I can't seem to find Penang durian. Here, if I'm in Penang, I'll go to the farm and get my durian. But here, most of the durian is from Pahang and East Coast. It's not like that I'm saying that the durian doesn't taste as good as Penang, but my point is there's a lot of deforestation that is being driven by durian plantations. And why I say I eat the Penang durians is because they've been there for a long time, and I know the farms and the organic farms, etc. Most of them are organic farms because they've been there for a long time. But because of the demand coming from us, as well as from China, there's loads of land being converted into durian plantations, not only in Malaysia, also in Thailand, also in Laos. So when I go, I love to talk about durian, and then I hear what people got to say to me. And they say they are also facing these issues. And that's causing floods in places like, Temerloh and Baling and all these towns are getting flooded because, well, there's no water catchment, right? And it's just, so I've now taken a conscious decision to stop eating durian that is not, but you cannot have, there's no label, sustainable farming or organic, none. So I need to know my supplier. If you're telling me it's from Raub, Sampahang, I say thank you very much, right? And I'll just reduce my eating to when I can get my durian from a proper farm, I'll go and have my fix. Otherwise, I'm not touching this thing. And I like to share that story so that hopefully, that you also, learn of it and decide to take action. And if that can scale, that would help in the sort of, you've read recently the bumper harvest that happened because this was going on too much and just durians everywhere. Well, we shouldn't buy them. Let them, Anyway, so that's another waste issue. But yeah, I'll stop there.
So Murali raises a very good point, right? So people don't realize that number one cause of deforestation in Malaysia now is durians. Number one cause of deforestation is durians. Because back in the day, like he rightly said, durian was seasonal. And we'd go to the orchard. It used to be, when we were growing up, friends who had their grandparents' orchard and all say, hey, let's go to my grandparents' durian orchard next weekend. And because it's a seasonal thing, we look forward to it every now and then. But then it became too commercial. Everyone wants durian. And then you can find durian almost all year round. Right, Mr. Durian and don't know what, every day there's got durians. And that's because the push from consumers. They said, I want more durian. There's durian tourism. I have friends who fly all the way from Indonesia. I caught up with one not too long ago. I was like, so what are you doing here? What brings you to town? Oh, durians, because it's Musang King season. So you fly all the way from Jakarta to eat durians? But that's what happens, right? And then people flying all the way from China, from anywhere else in the world to enjoy durians. And why aren't we talking about that? Of course, if the consumers put a stop to it, we could get things under control. So this is where we need to take action. We all need to be like Murali.
So if let's say there's a seller organic farm in Penang, should I order group buyer delivery? but we have to think about the trade-off, right? Because the carbon emissions from Penang to KL, the transportation. Because I can't.
Transport emissions, in fairness, is very low compared to the deforestation effects and all of that. Actually, it's minuscule when you look at when you bulk buy. Obviously, if you're just buying for yourself, then there's a problem. But when you bulk buy for 50 people and one person makes a trip, then that makes more sense. Yeah.
Okay. Any more from the floor in the room here? Any more? All right. So our session is called Beyond Buzzwords. So maybe I just want to ask everyone in the room here, if everyone here could stop doing one thing and start doing one thing tomorrow to move sustainability from a buzzword to reality, what would that be? from Klang Valley. Support Penang durian, is it? Any?
Maybe I can start just to give some ideas. So there's a book called Drawdown. Obviously, you can see we come from slightly different particular focus areas. You know, he talks a lot about social. I talk about climate. So from a climate and emissions perspective, there's a book called Drawdown, Project Drawdown. You can just Google it. It's there. It gives you a list of, I think, about 100 things that we should be doing, and a lot of it we can be doing ourselves to collectively reduce emissions. And the single most effective thing that we can do is actually move to a more plant-based diet. A more plant-based diet, meaning cut down on meat, right? In particular, beef, ruminants, basically beef, lamb, etc. Yeah, and so understanding the carbon footprint of what we are consuming, I think, becomes really key, so that we can decide. You know, I'm not saying completely give it up, you know, but you can always transition so that you know, and it's better for your health anyway, with more fiber in your body, you know. So, but I'm not a doctor, but that's one of the things that you could do. Understanding the carbon footprint of your actions. Yes.
Good.
Fantastic. Where are you traveling from? Oh.
An hour and a half.
Yeah. Taking public transport when you can makes a big impact. Yeah.
Anyone want to share? Still thinking? Any questions? Any more from the floor, or anything that the speakers want to add?
Yeah, no, the man's looking at his watch, so I think we better wrap it up. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think that that brings us back to where we started. So we all recognize the importance of sustainability. The challenge begins when it's required choices, trade-off, investment. Sometimes it's also change the way we do things. Right. So what we have discussed today is that maybe the goal is not to wait for a perfect solutions like what you mentioned just now, but to make better decisions, a better system, and keep improving. So dear all, we have come to the end of our sessions. On behalf of Sunway University, I would like to express our sincere appreciations to Ravins and Murali for spending your time with us and for such an engaging sessions. And also thank you for all my colleagues here, students and member of public for joining us on YouTube and contributing to the conversation. So I would like to invite Angela from the branding to give a token appreciations to Murali and Ravin. Can you maybe move to the side? Okay, can we give a clap? Oh, we together? Okay, I think can I end maybe? Right. Thank you, everyone, and please join me again to give a big round of applause to our speakers. Thank you very much to everyone. Okay, group photo, please. you.